Hello, welcome to Franchise and Lows, Donkey Kong platformers on Nintendo Handhelds. I don't know why I specified Nintendo Handhelds there. It's not like they're going to put fucking Donkey Kong on a PS Vita or the Wonder Swan, is it? Yeah, here we go again. I'm not going to give you too much for a preamble. You all know who Donkey Kong is, and there's a lot of interesting ports and original games available on the handhelds featuring the character. And you know me, I like my unusual ports, I like my unusual games. You'll find that the rate of quality here is very, very high indeed, as you'd expect. So hopefully you'll enjoy this little journey through the games. It's sort of semi-improvised the same way all of these are. And yeah, I didn't open with the DK rap, as you might have anticipated, because that would be unbelievably cliched and shit, and I'm brilliant. My videos are great, so fuck off. We're coming out of the gate here with what I can only really describe as a fucking masterpiece. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, or Game Boy Donkey Kong as the title screen calls it. Probably best known as Donkey Kong 94, even though that's not its actual name. It's just one of the best cartridges available for any system, frankly, and there's a very convincing, I think, argument that it's the best Game Boy game ever made. Coming out of the gate, it sort of presents itself as I don't like to say remake, because that's obviously a very silly term, but a port of Donkey Kong, as you know and love it, with sort of a few quality of life changes, and some extra items and bonuses and things. But it's Donkey Kong. You've got the familiar level layouts, you've got the interstitial screens that, at 25 meters, 50 meters, that whole thing. How high can you get? How high can you get? Drugs, am I right, lads? But once you defeat Donkey Kong in stage 4, things just take an immediate sideways turn, a sharp turn into something very different, which uses the same mechanics as Donkey Kong, but presents you with a succession of increasingly challenging and varied levels, or 90 odd of them, mate. There's nearly 100. I can't, there's not enough time for me to explain everything in this game, but what fascinates me about it is it's essentially a remake and a sequel at the same time, but it's also Mario sort of putting his foot into the sort of the giant endless pool that is his future, because this is the first game that gave Mario, the backflip, all that stuff, all his athletic stuff that would eventually become crucial to Mario 64. It's here first. So this is our first glimpse at Mario of the future, and I think that's really interesting. Taking that aside, it's just an unbelievably good fucking game. It's fun as shit. There are no bad levels I can think of. It's got so many gimmicks and gameplay elements, but it never overwhelms you, because it has that Nintendo confidence to introduce something, and then if it's served its purpose, to get rid of it. There's no need to mess around with this anymore. You've wrung all the fun out of it, and the rest of it would just be content. But there's no just content here. This is an incredibly full-featured game. I wouldn't say it's particularly difficult to finish. There's a few stumping levels that you'll need to figure out, but as you play through and as it introduces elements like picking up trash cans or swinging on power lines, or creating new parts of the level, like it's Mario Maker or something, which in my theory is perhaps vestigial remains of what may have been a level editor, because it's the kind of game that really could use one, I think. And it's no coincidence, I'd say, that the games that followed up on this, like Mario vs. Donkey Kong, the minis games that came after that, did include level editors, but they didn't have the same type of gameplay, so it's kind of a waste. Not that I'm really talking about Mario vs. Donkey Kong yet. I'll get to that at some point in some way, but what you've got here is just a succession of some of Nintendo's best work ever. The visuals are perfect. It's so easy to pass, but yet detailed enough that it looks order of magnitude better than like previous gen Game Boy games generally did, and the sprites aren't so big that they blur constantly. You can always see what you're doing and what you need to do. It's full of surprises. It's full of really fun, silly cutscenes. It's got a sort of boss stages with Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. There's no element of Donkey Kong itself, the original arcade game, that isn't used to its full extent to maximize its potential. I could gush about this all day long, but I want this video to end at some point, so if you ever play a Donkey Kong game on handheld, it should be this one. If you ever play any game on handheld, it should probably be this one. It's world-class gaming, and anyone who disagrees should be in prison as far as I'm concerned.
It's magical! It's mysterious!
(1995) saw the release of Donkey Kong Land, which is sort of a match for the Super Mario Land vibe or theme, in that it's a smaller version of, say, what would have been Mario World. Of course, here we're talking about Donkey Kong Country, one of the biggest Super Nintendo games ever made. Nothing but good things to say about that one. I absolutely love it. But Donkey Kong Land is it's interesting. I don't dislike it. I do actually enjoy playing it because partly because I played it as a kid quite a lot, and there is nostalgia there for me. I do think that it's quite good in a lot of ways. I think that the attempt to translate the sort of pre-rendered visuals from the Super Nintendo was maybe, if not misguided, a failed experiment, because this game, it looks bad. There's a little bit of jank to it as well, which you would kind of have to account for if you want to enjoy yourself. But I'd say overall, it's a pretty decent time. It's easily my favourite of the Donkey Kong Land games, because it's the one with the most original sort of feeling content while also retaining some playability. It does have levels based on the archetypes from Donkey Kong Country, of course, but it also has new level archetypes that don't appear in any other Donkey Kong platformer, like the sort of cloud levels, and then there's a sort of, I guess, a steel mill, or not a steel mill, but like a, girders, like what they would have in fucking Rhapsody in Blue sequence from Fantasia 2000. That's a good point of reference to. Everyone's going to get that one. But of course, that's in reference really to the original Donkey Kong. It's a level type that wasn't in Country, and it's present here. There's a lot of levels. In order to save the game, you have to collect all the Kong letters, and that can actually be quite tricky. You've got the whole thing of finding bonus areas to fully complete levels, which makes an exclamation mark appear above them on the map for 100%. You're switching between Donkey Kong and Diddy like usual with their sort of different characteristics. You've got really rather good music for Game Boy here. The main problem with the game is visually it could use some clarity. Sometimes the enemies blend into the background a little bit, especially I would say in some of the swimming levels. But The view is zoomed out enough, despite Donkey Kong being a very large player sprite. The view is zoomed out enough to make the game, I'd say, perfectly playable. I like it. Many won't, but I'd advise you to give it some time if you're that way inclined, because there is some very interesting stuff here if you're a Donkey Kong Country fan and want to see a really rather different take on it.
Whoever's got the coconut rules.
The next two games are going to be fairly predictable, given that we had the handheld counterpart to Donkey Kong Country. Of course, in 1996, we get the handheld counterpart to Donkey Kong Country 2, which is it is a lot closer to the design of the actual SNES game. The problem is, nowadays, of course, you can play the SNES game on a handheld via the GBA in a very good version, which we'll get to later. For me, while there are improvements in Donkey Kong Land 2, especially in terms of clarity, the backgrounds are less messy here, the enemies are mostly more visible, the fact that it does retain this sort of a simulacrum, if that's the right word, of the level designs in Donkey Kong Country 2, what it does for me is it makes it less unique and therefore less interesting. There's so much in Donkey Kong Land 1 that's not in Donkey Kong Country, but Donkey Kong Land 2 really is just Donkey Kong Country 2, but shitter. I hope that distinction makes sense. It doesn't mean it's a bad game, it just means there's not really any reason to play it now compared to Land 1, I would argue. But no, a version of Donkey Kong Country 2 that's shitter still means it's Donkey Kong Country 2 on some level, and you really can't fault that. But for me, it's just kind of like, I don't want to go back to this. If I wanted to play DKC 2, I would just play DKC 2. So this one's a bit redundant, in my opinion.
Got a lot of muscle mass, but not so much brain mass.
Predictably, 1997 brought us Donkey Kong Land 3, based on, Christ, what's it called? Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, I think that's what it's called. It's been a while. Now, Donkey Kong Country 3 is a little bit of a sort of black sheep in that series. It's a good game, it's enjoyable, but it feels dumbed down from Donkey Kong Country 2 in many ways, I find, and it's got a reliance on gimmicks that don't really sustain interest. Now, Donkey Kong Land 3 is retains the level archetypes and basic progression of Donkey Kong Country 3, but the level designs are new, or at least they're not just sort of aped, I get it, from the original game. The issue for me with Donkey Kong Land 3 is, I think that visually it's a bit of a step down. I think that there's a lot less clarity and with more sort of maybe overly detailed backgrounds in places, and the enemies sort of blend into the scenery a bit, but that was a problem with 1 as well. I still prefer 1 because of the amount of sort of new content in there. But 3 it's another good game that I just don't really have any real reason to play. I mean, I don't really want to play Country 3 that much, so Land 3 is not a hugely appealing prospect, though I'd say the more simplistic gameplay of it actually suits the Game Boy a little better than it suits the Super Nintendo. There's probably fans who are really mad at me now, but I'm not saying that Land 3 or Donkey Kong Country 3 is a bad game. I've played it through many, many times. It's really enjoyable, but it's just not as good as 2 and 1 for me. It's just not as good. And I guess I kind of feel that way about this, although I'd rather play this than Land 2 to some extent. It's fine. It's more than fine. It's good. It's just a bit bland when you could play the original or any of the others. But no, you know, I rate it, and it's got a Red Dwarf reference in it, so that's fun too. That's nice, you know. It's alright. I guess give it a go. There's a Japan-only Game Boy Color version of Donkey Kong Land 3, which is called Donkey Kong GB, Dinky Kong, and Dixie Kong. Dinky Kong presumably referring to Kiddy Kong. I don't know why it's called Dinky Kong in Japan. It's a better name, to be honest. But nonetheless, it's definitely an improvement in terms of clarity. I wouldn't say the color is all that impressive, really, but it's definitely the superior way to play this game if you must play it. It doesn't completely fix it or anything, it's just a lot easier to get by with the colour version. It's not actually, I don't recall it being particularly expensive online either, so probably worth seeking out if you're a fan of the series. It's not going to set you back too much. By the time I say this though, it may have skyrocketed, so who knows.
General Clump, I order you to seize the coconut!
Also in 2000, as well as the colour version of Donkey Kong Land 3, Rare put out a port conversion of Donkey Kong Country on the Game Boy Color, which is quite the undertaking, I'm sure you'll agree, considering that it's so famous on Super Nintendo for pushing the boundaries visually on the system. And the Game Boy Color can't really realistically compete with that. But having said that, this is a very impressive version of the game. It has the Donkey Kong Land feel, but it is there. All the content seems to be there. In fact, there's even an extra level in the final world called Necky's Nutmare, which is really funny because it's got the word nut in it, like a testicle, you know. As well as that, there are a couple of mini games. Crosshair Cranky, which is like a shooting gallery, a bit like whack-a-mole in a way, and there's Funky's Fishing, which has you sitting in a boat against time picking up as many fish as you can, which is actually quite a lot of fun, and you can play them multiplayer if you have the link cable. They've also hidden these sort of sticker packs, photographs around the game that you can look at from an in-game sticker book, and if you've got a Game Boy printer, which nobody obviously does, you can print them out and just waste your friend's time. Just go up to them and just be like, hey, check this out, I've got a sticker of a Kremling, and they're going to just be like, fuck off, Stu, we don't give a shit, we like girls now. So I mean, I'm avoiding talking about the game, but it's fine. It's a good version of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Color, and it has a fascination to it for that reason. But you know, they put this game out on the Game Boy Advance like really quickly after this, and that version is significantly, I would argue, superior, though in some ways it's not. And I'll get to that reasonably quickly for you.
Donkey Kong, where are you?
2003 saw the release of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, which was an interesting choice because the Game Boy Color version would likely have been hanging around on the shelves, and it's the third time they've offered this game. It's an interesting port. Again, I like this version a lot, but it does have problems. The visuals are... I mean, it looks like someone vomited Haribo on the screen sometimes because it's so bright, and obviously the reason for that is the original Game Boy Advance hardware was, it wasn't backlit, so when you play this on like an SP or a Micro, it looks kind of even worse. It looks really bad, but it plays very well. I don't think that it's the land engine here. I think they have actually overhauled it. It does feel more like the SNES game. Though, of course, it's not. It doesn't have the atmosphere of the SNES game, which is one of the best things about that game. And that's completely gone. But there's quite a lot here that they've added. Funky's Fishing is back, and there's a dancing minigame with Candy Kong, which is absolutely dreadful. The new level from the Game Boy Color version isn't here anymore. There's no new levels at all, but there is a new mode called DK Attack, which is really interesting because it presents you with every level in the game. And then it's like Time Attack, except you collect like these items, a bit like Crash Bandicoot's Time Trials. And at the end of the level, you'll be given a rank, and that turns Donkey Kong into something completely different. It's almost like Sonic Adventure, because you're like, how on earth can I get an A rank? I thought I'm doing perfectly here. But then you'll find new ways to speed things up, new items, and there are some tweaks and changes to the levels here and there. They've updated a few things. They've retained the sticker pack thing. You collect stickers by doing certain actions or finding them hidden in the game, which adds more replay value. I rate this. I think it's a very good version of the game. It's just, now that, of course, the original SNES version can be played on a handheld with relative ease, it loses some appeal, but that DK Attack mode and the new stuff does go a reasonable way to improving the situation. I like it a lot. There's also a fan hack that restores the original colours, which improves things significantly, but obviously that's a fan hack and not the original game. It's a good time, and if you like DKC and you want to prove that you're good at DKC, then DK Attack is the way to go here, for sure.
Why do I always have to start the day with a tough decision?
2004 brought us Donkey Kong Country 2 for the GBA, and this was very, very welcome because Donkey Kong Country 2 is considered by many to be the best game in the series. If you're interested in my opinion, I still value the first one above it, but I think DKC 2 is a 10 out of 10. There's just, my only issue with it is once you've finished it, there's not much scope for replay, because when you know where all the secrets are, it loses a lot of its appeal. You could argue that for the original as well, but I think the original flows better and it doesn't really focus on the secrets like this game does with its collectibles. But I'm getting besides the point. This is a very solid version for GBA. They added another time attack mode, Diddy's Dash, which is lots of fun, though it doesn't have the sort of ranking system of the one in DKC 1 on Game Boy Advance, which is a bit of a shame. There are some more mini-games, Bag a Bug, Espresso Racing, and Funky's Flights. Now, Espresso Racing is really stupid, but what it adds is you use golden feathers to level up your Espresso Ostrich for these races, and there's a golden feather hidden in every level, so there are now new secrets to find in DKC2, which is very, very welcome. Funky's Flights is an odd sort of Lunar Lander-ish. Not a choplifter actually, where you fly around picking up things with a crane, which is nice, which is fun. Not a crane, with a hook, which is fun. There's a new boss, Kerosene, which is actually kind of crap, but it's a new boss, and that's nice, you know. DKC 2 is so good that any version of it is extremely valuable. So I spent a lot of time with this back in the day, and you know, there's a whole scrapbook to fill up again. You can save the game anywhere now rather than just at save points, and that's true in the original GBA version as well. It's marvellous, really. It looks like shit as usual, but again, there's a hack to improve that sort of Haribo vomit look. I recommend it quite highly. If you have a GBA, I think it's more or less essential because it really is that good. Even with the other version available, the original version available, it's nice having the additional sort of secrets to find, the photographs and the golden feathers. So for me, this is probably my favourite version of the game. It's the one I go to when I want to play it. So yeah, highly recommended, but do understand that the atmosphere is once again more or less vanished.
I'm just an underprivileged reptile.
Amazing mini Mario toy. Hurry, bye. Bananas. Mini Mario toy. It walks, it talks, it says. Each one comes in its own crystal ball. Collect one, collect them all. Be the first one on your block to own the amazing new mini Mario toy. Hurry before they're all sold out. Hurry, buy one, buy them all. Buy them all. Buy them all. Buy them all. Mario versus Donkey Kong. Here we go.
In a bit of a curveball, 2005 gave us Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy Advance, a pre-rendered visuals game that sort of follows up to Donkey Kong Game Boy, aka DK94 if you're a tosser. But it's not really nearly as good, though it is still enjoyable. The main issue that I have with this game is... I'll get to it actually. And initially, it presents as a fairly staid platformer with quite flat-looking graphics that do kind of resemble the original to some extent, but lack character. The aim is, as ever, to get the key to the door in order to progress, but to do that, you're going to be hitting a lot of switches, activating a lot of mechanisms, and dealing with a lot of enemies. It's hard to know what to say about it because I don't want to slag it off because I do think it's a pretty strong game. It's just there's something sort of workmanlike about the whole thing. It's the graphics, I think, are the problem because they are quite flat. The pre-rendered thing takes away a lot of character. My least favourite thing about it is the fact that they added bonus games between each level if you collect the three presents. There's a red, blue, and yellow present on each level that you can get for points, and getting all three of them lets you play a bonus game. The issue is that the bonus games are terrible. In Donkey Kong on Game Boy, the bonus game is extremely short and extremely easy. In this, it's quite frustrating and it goes on for too long and comes up too often. It's like you've got to pick there's like three presents, you've got to let Donkey Kong squash two of them and you get one back, or it's just a straight up sort of pick one and you get the item, and the only item you're going to get is 1-ups. There's nothing else, and you're not going to run out of lives, and if you do, it's not going to punish you, so it doesn't really matter. Each level scores you has like a threshold score to beat to collect the star, which means you'll be replaying quite a lot of the levels to get them because it requires you to be both quick and thorough. They removed that from the remake, which I'll talk about shortly, but it's just... it's good, but it's... I don't know how to describe it. It feels like Mario Party. It's not like real shit. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, here's another game. I don't know how to describe it. The post-game, I'm going to spoil it because it doesn't matter. Once you beat the game, you unlock basically a whole new set of levels, the same number again. It's very cool. But they've added a new feature, which is that one of the mini Marios from the story, the little toy Marios, is following you around. So you've got to account for it in everything you do, because if it gets destroyed, you lose. And that is great, and I wish the whole game had been like that, because it means that you're essentially playing through these really not difficult at all levels to get to the meat of the game at all. It's a bit like Mario 3D Land, you know, where when you beat the game there's a whole new set of worlds, but they're much harder and therefore more interesting. That sounds a bit gatekeepy, but it's not. It's just how it is for me. Mario vs Donkey Kong, yeah, it's good. I'm going to talk about the remake a bit now, because I didn't really want to talk about Mario vs Donkey Kong that much, because you don't play as Donkey Kong, but I do consider it a Donkey Kong platformer for handheld. But the Switch version of this game, I would say, is probably one of the best remakes of all time, because it improves literally every aspect of the game. There's nothing that's worse in the remake. They got rid of the scoring thing, so that clearing levels is just about finding all the items now, and some people, maybe purists, would dislike that because it removes some challenge. But I don't really want to deal with that shit. I just want to... If you're making a breezy puzzle platformer, just make that. You don't have to turn it into, like, I don't know, Sonic Adventure 2 trying to get A ranks all the time. I don't appreciate it. That's very un-Mario to me. So I do like the improvements the remake made. They added a couple of new worlds as well to fill out the number, because there's only 6 in the original game. So that means there's, 4 new worlds technically, I guess. But, yeah, it's great. It's a fantastic remake, but again, it's a remake of a game that's just kind of good-ish, so don't get too excited. They also removed the bonus rooms from the, or they changed the bonuses so they don't come up as often, and when they do, they're more engaging and interesting, which is a fantastic change. It's the one thing I wanted when they announced it. I was saying, wow, this will be really good if they get rid of the freaking bonus levels, and they did, so well done to Nintendo for that.
That's it! Cut Donkey Kong's hair!
Inevitably, a port of Donkey Kong Country 3 appeared for the GBA in 2005, towards the end of the year. Yeah, it's Donkey Kong Country 3. They actually removed the scrapbook and sort of the additional collectibles from this version, but they did add some new mini-games again. Like there's a take on, I want to say, the bonus game from International Karate, aka IK. That's in here with cranky blocking hedgehogs that are getting thrown at him for some reason. There's actually a whole new world here called Pacifica, which is 6 brand new levels and bonus rooms with a new boss. And new levels of Donkey Kong Country was very cool before we got DKC Returns. The problem is those levels are a little bit weird and not so great. Additionally, the entire soundtrack has been replaced by a Dave Wise soundtrack, and it's actually a pretty great soundtrack, but the problem is sometimes it's really unusual and doesn't quite fit the level designs, in my opinion. I like the original soundtrack quite a lot, but the Fisher soundtrack, I like it a lot, but it is subdued compared to this one. See how you feel, because obviously both versions are easily available now, but yeah, I like the fact that they made it so that in this game, when you want to collect the DK coin, defeating the enemy who's holding it will automatically pick it up. It's only a small change, but it's a nice quality of life change. They've redone the map completely as well to make room for the new world. But everything else is more or less the same. You can save anywhere as before, and there's another new mini game with Funky, which is a bit like the old Rareware game Cobra Triangle a bit, which is kind of weird, another copter thing. But it's fine. It's not amazing. It's just fine. Plenty to do, plenty of content of the original game. The visuals again have been sort of spruced up, but not as badly. This is probably the closest one to the SNES game that they managed. But I'd recommend 2 over it any day. This is fine though, certainly worth buying. I'd imagine it's probably quite expensive now though. It was a quite late GBA release, so I wouldn't be surprised. I picked it up on clearance a long time ago, but I don't have it anymore, which makes me sad.
Candy! She's just a girl, DK. You can't have fun with a girl like we do.
In 2005, we got a bit of another curveball from Nintendo and a company I don't know how to pronounce the name of, Paon. It doesn't matter. K-On! That was a good anime, wasn't it? Anyway, DK King of Swing is sort of based on an old Nintendo game called Clu Clu Land, to the point of the main character from Clu Clu Land appearing in this game as a secret. Sorry for spoiling it. The basic premise is that you move around the levels as Donkey Kong with the L and R buttons on your GBA acting as grips for his right and left hands. It's easier to do than it is to describe, but yeah, you move around by grabbing the pegs, launching yourself. If you hold both together and wait, you'll do like a super charge which can destroy enemies. There's a lot of collectibles to get, hidden collectibles, and some multiplayer gaming as well, which I've not tried because it's on the GBA. It's got a nice cute graphic style, sort of cartoonish, which is different from anything that's come before, but it does include characters like Cranky Kong and Wrinkly Kong, dead Wrinkly Kong as a ghost because she died. That's canon. Yeah, it's not bad. It's quite enjoyable. It's very frustrating is my issue with it. It's very difficult, and it's kind of difficult in a way that's not that fun. It's just annoying. Like if you're trying to achieve a certain goal and you get sort of screwed over, you're going to have to be replaying quite a lot of very difficult levels. And I'm not crazy about that. In a sense, I consider it something of a first draft for its own sequel, which I'll talk about imminently.
Yes, I am a thoughtful son of a gun.
2007's DK Jungle Climber is a direct sequel to King of Swing, and for my money, it's like the sort of full evolution and realization of what that game could have been. The addition of, dual screens due to it being on the DS hugely, vastly improves it. You can see so much more of the space around you and take advantage of it. And the controls are smoother. There's tons to do in each of the levels. The levels are bigger, but they're also friendlier. The design is much, much less frustrating due to a number of changes they've made. You can now get Diddy on your back and launch him as a weapon, which is way better. And instead of holding L and R to charge frustratingly, you can just press the A button. It's improved in every regard, and honestly, I think it's really underappreciated. I had a great time playing this game. A really, really fun combination of platforming and the King of Swing, swinging. And what I appreciated the most is because I put the time into 100% this game. Like, I really had a great time with it. I loved playing it. When you beat it, you unlock these expert levels, which are like, I'm not going to say Kaizo, but for a Nintendo game, they are getting there. Like the amount of exploitation of the engine you need to do to finish them is so insane. It's not the kind of thing I would ever expect a Nintendo game to throw at you, and it's almost worth it just to see them. But the game is really fun. It's very focused on collectibles, yes, If you encounter a challenge that is sort of too much for you, you can use the little stars. You can see them in the bottom right of the screen. They'll make you invincible and be able to fly for a short while, so you can cheese some stuff if you're having trouble with it. But it's also got a completely lunatic storyline about an alien banana called Zanana, which is hilarious. The only thing I don't like is that they've changed the graphics to the more pre-rendered Donkey Kong Country style. And while they're not bad, I did prefer the cartoonish, cute ones in King of Swing. Strongly recommend getting this game though. It's brilliant. It really is brilliant, and I would be surprised if it was expensive. But so is, everything's expensive now. So God knows, really.
You're thinking, but honey, I'm no ordinary day.
It wasn't till 2013 that fans of 2D Donkey Kong got all their prayers answered at once, more or less, when Retro Studios' Donkey Kong Country Returns was released for the Nintendo Wii, a hugely popular then current Nintendo system. I love this game. I think it's extremely good. It's a lot more focused on, I would say, spectacle than the Rare games, although that seems odd to say with hindsight, considering how visually oriented those games were as well. But Donkey Kong Country Returns levels do feel alive. There's a lot going on. The difficulty level is quite high, but you do have options to mitigate it via items that you can purchase with the in-game coins. The main aim, of course, is to get to the end of each stage, but you can collect puzzle pieces as you go on, and getting all of those will unlock various different bits of bonus content. They've translated the feel of Donkey Kong Country and its level design extremely well, with the inclusion of things like the bonus rooms, the blast barrels, the mine carts, everything. It's all there, and it's all very, very good. If I can knock anything, I don't like the fact that those aforementioned bonus rooms do repeat. That is kind of accurate to the original game, but it's also a little bit cheap, and it's something I'd rather not have occur. There's a ton of levels, including a bunch of secret levels you unlock in the manner of, the Lost World from Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. 3, because in 2 it's Kramatoa or something, isn't it? Not the Lost World, that's in 3. Most editors would just edit that out, but I'm leaving it in so you can get my entire thought process. That's the Stuart Jip difference. That's the Jip difference. You can play this game on co-op with 2 players, one is Donkey Kong and one is Diddy Kong, and that's enormous fun as well. A lot of people sort of understandably don't like or didn't like the fact that it's got motion controls. You hold your Wii remote sideways and shake it to roll, and rolling is integral, so you'll always be doing it. I personally had no problem with it. I 100%ed the game with those controls, and I don't think I can recall that there was any instance where I felt like I wasn't in control. But if you prefer, it was also released later on the 3DS with obviously sort of nerfed graphics, but the controls were just traditional button controls in that version, and there's an extra world in there as well, a la DKC 3 on GBA. They've actually announced very recently that this game is coming to the Switch as well, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which I'm excited about, although it will be the 3rd release for this game. It feels like it's going to be something of a definitive edition, because it is including the 3DS extra world as well. But finally, full button controls, and obviously in HD. It's a little bit, it's a nice little cheap way to bolster the Switch library in its kind of dying years. By the time I release this, I don't know whether it'll be out or not, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, because this game is a lot of fun. It looks great, plays great, and it's a fantastic reintroduction of the characters.
Snip, snip, gonna clip. Make you my sweet and sexy chimp.
In 2018, we got Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze for the Wii U, the sequel to Donkey Kong Country Returns, and I have a difficult relationship with this game. It was later re-released on the Switch, where it's got this new funky mode that lets you play as Funky Kong, who's essentially invincible. It's very easy that way. I don't like talking about this game that much because no one agrees with me about it, I don't think, on the entire planet. But I think it's a step down from Returns. I don't think the levels were as interesting. I think that the challenge was sort of prioritised in a way that I don't enjoy. There are some very difficult levels in Returns, but they are positioned as such. And in this game, I felt like frustration was sometimes what they were going for, and I don't really want that. It's got fantastic music, if you like that sort of thing, from Dave Wise, and it does look good and it runs very smoothly. I'm not going to be an idiot and say that it sucks or anything, but there's a real mannered nature to the level design that, to me, feels like it very much lacks any surprises. Donkey Kong Country Returns would sometimes make you go like, wow, what's going on here? But I didn't really find that in Tropical Freeze. It just felt safe. A little bit for me like how I felt about Mario Wonder. It's so similar to the original that it feels almost redundant to me. It's just, here's a bunch more levels of this. They've added in Cranky Kong and Dixie Kong as well as Diddy Kong that you can carry around with you, which give you different moves. Diddy Kong lets you hover with his jetpack. Cranky Kong lets you do the Scrooge McDuck DuckTales pogo bounce with his pogo stick, and Dixie Kong lets you do the helicopter hair from Donkey Kong 2 and 3. But I don't really care for that, because what it means is they added in a bunch of secret exits, like Mario World style, and in order to find them, you can make your way through a level and then find that when you get to the place with the exit, you don't have the right Kong with you because you had no way of knowing. And that's the kind of secret that frustrates me, where the solution isn't anything clever. It's just go back and do the level again, but this time bring the right partner in with you. That's weak, in my opinion. There's a lot of ideas and ambition, but I feel like the ideas and the visuals got in the way of the gameplay here. It just doesn't deliver in the way that I expect from a sequel to DKC Returns, which I still think is excellent. Everyone disagrees, and it's often called the best platformer ever. I think you're on crack if you think that, to be honest, but each to their own, you know. All the familiar elements are back, and that's pretty much it. I didn't love it.
Ever since Candy cut my hair and told me she wanted to make me her little love slave.
Your hair?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. To the best of my knowledge, that is all of handheld Donkey Kong platformers. I think the average quality is incredibly high, as you'd expect from a sort of first-party Nintendo series. Tropical Freeze, which, you know, I'm not crazy about. Like I said, everyone else loves it, and you'll probably love it too, much more than I did. I don't know. It's very hard for me to articulate what it is about Tropical Freeze that left me cold, but I suppose there's a degree to which it's just the way that it's more demanding is not really fun for me. Having to bounce, there's a lot of enemy bouncing, and to bounce off enemies in that game you've got to press and hold A when you hit the enemy. You can't just hold it in anticipation, it doesn't work. And because you also have to press A in the air to activate the different Kong skills, I found that a bit fiddly, and the fact that it's so accentuated in Tropical Freeze as a feature, it bothers me. I find it irritating. I should have said that on the previous section, but it's just occurred to me now, really. So yeah, that's another episode of Franchise and Lows. I'm sorry it's been so long. I've got a lot going on. To do my usual sign-off, I do still want to do videos like Video World, but I've been sort of examining what would get me to bring that back, and I do have a plan, but it's just executing it. And I hope that making this will scratch the itch to a degree, and it will get the bug, so give me the bug a little bit and get me to do that, because the idea I've got I think is very fun and people will like it. I just need to actually pull my finger out of my arse and do it. I've got more Franchise and Lows coming up as well. There's another episode that's mostly done, so hopefully it won't be too long until you get the next one, which will make you say core design.